Hi, and welcome to another video. Today let's talk about gravity simulation in Flutter. What is a gravity simulation? I think the name says for itself, it's a simulation of gravity. A simulation that applies a constant acceleration force. Models a particle that follows Newton's second law of motion. As such, it takes a couple of arguments. So if we have a look at the constructor over here, we have the acceleration, then we have distance, so where we start from, we have end distance, where we want to get to, and we have some initial velocity. For now, you can see that it's basically implementing this simulation interface, which already gives us a couple of things. Like, for example, the dx, so the velocity of the object in the simulation at a given time. Then we have whether it's done in a given time. Again, you can see we have this arguments time over here. And we also get x, the position of an object in the simulation at a given time. Here is a simple application I've prepared. It does not much. It has a layout builder to get height over here. There are other ways to do it, but this works as well. And we are passing it to this myApp stateful widget, and inside over here we have this sized box with a container, and the container is of a color green. Now let's run it. Here we go. Nothing is drawn on the screen, and this is because for now this sized box is a height of 0. And what I would like to implement here is a kind of a curtain. So this sized box would be full width, and it will be kind of dropping down, having a gravity on the screen until it reaches the end of the screen. For that, we will use an animation and also the gravity simulation to get this acceleration effect. So first of all, since we will be dealing with a animation, we need to use a mixin. And we have the sticker provider state mixin, which will allow the animation to run and re-render the screen on every second, basically. Then we need some controller. Animation controller. Call the controller. And we will initialize it here in a moment in an ini state. So here let's define our controller. We have some animation controller, this one. For vsync, let's give it this, and then we can give it some upper bound. And let's say it's currently widget.height. Perfect. So we have our controller, and then we will want to call animate with on this controller. And this animate with takes a simulation. So there is a couple of this simulation already implemented, but you can also implement your own simulation. One of them is the gravity simulation. So let's use that. We have the gravity simulation class. We need to specify what would be the acceleration, and I would like the acceleration to be the height, and I will explain how it works in a moment. Then where we start with, let's say that we start from the point 0, where we want to get to. So to the height of the screen in our case, and also some initial velocity, which could be 0. So we could start with a 0 velocity. And finally, we need to import it from this Flutter physics package. There we go. Now, since we have a controller, we also should dispose it. So on dispose, let's call our controller dispose. So when the widget is disposed, then we also dispose the controller. We don't have any memory leaks and stuff like that. Finally, let's wrap our sized box with a builder. And instead of a normal builder, let's use an animation builder. Here we go. Now, animation builder doesn't take only context, but also a child over here. So let's add this. And we also should specify an animation. And our animation is controlled by this controller. Let's also add a nice pretty comma here. And finally, let's use a value that is coming here from the controller. As the animation is in progress, then this value will be updated, and the animation builder is basically rebuilding this sized box with whatever the value is there that we can use. So let's make that. Let's restart again. It starts slow, and then notice that it's starting to fall faster and faster with the acceleration that we defined, which is currently of a value height. So let's say that the height of the screen is 400, so the acceleration is 400, and now let's understand what is this 400 actually. So here is the implementation of this simulation, gravity simulation. And here we have an example of a start fall animation, where they explain you that this 10 is an acceleration in pixels per second. So in our case, if the height of the screen is 400, then I want the acceleration to be 400 pixels per second. So in this way, I know that the animation will finish pretty quickly in less than a second. Here they explain you that this 0, 0 is a starting point, here we have an ending point, and finally this is the starting velocity. So we can already start with some velocity. If we would start with a 300 of a velocity, then of course the animation will start looking different. Let's run again. There we go. Now let's go back to our application. And let's say that instead I want the velocity to be something small, let's say 50. Let's restart. And notice it's starting very slow because the velocity at the beginning is 0. And then it slowly keeps accelerating and falling slower, but it's still extremely slow because it's just 50 and our screen is, for example, 400 or 500 right now. If we give it 1000 right now instead, let's run it again. There we go. We get a very quick animation. You can of course define your own simulations, so if you would want to do that, then you can just implement this simulation interface and just define how should the x dx change and when should it be done depending on current time. That's about it about the gravity simulation, and I hope this helps you do some pretty cool accelerated animations in Flutter. But for now, I code you to death and I'll see you at the next video. Bye bye.